On the alien world of Thyrol, the skies were ruled by beings with beautiful wings and glowing eyes. Their people, the Thyrolans, believed in strength, perfection, and grace. Weakness was not welcome. Those born different were hidden, forgotten, or worse. In the royal palace, made of shining silver stones and floating towers, there lived a young princess named Averi. She was unlike the others. She had one damaged wing and a weak leg. She couldn't fly. She limped when she walked. Royal family called her flawed. For years, she stayed locked inside her quiet room, far from the public eye. But Averi had a strong heart. And a mind full of dreams, she often stared out her window at the vast forest beyond the palace, a dangerous place called the Forest of Thorns, adorned, where wild creatures roamed and no one dared enter without guards. One morning, before the suns rose, Averi decided she had enough of hiding with nothing but a small bag. A light cloak and a quiet goodbye to her robotic caretaker, she limped out of the palace and into the wild forest. She had no map, no plan. Just the desire to see the world and feel freedom for the first time. The forest was thick and dark. Strange. Plants moved like animals. The air smelled sweet and sharp at the same time. Every step Averi took was hard. Her leg ached, and thorns tore at her robe. But she smiled. "This is better than being locked in silence," she whispered to herself. Hours passed, then something moved. A sound, sharp breathing. Heavy steps and growling. A beast emerged from the bushes, tall as a tree, with 4 glowing eyes and jaws that dripped acid. A growlvek, a predator known to eat anything that moved. Averi froze. Her weak leg trembled. She tried to run but stumbled. The beast came closer. "No, ... double quotes," she gasped. "Not like this." Not like a loud boom. A flash of light exploded. From behind the beast, it screamed and turned. From the trees, a strange figure appeared, a human. He wore a torn suit with blinking lights on his chest. He held a metal rod that shot out sparks. His hair was messy, face dirty, and his eyes sharp. "Get behind me," he shouted. Averi didn't understand the words, but his tone was clear. She crawled back as the human fought the beast using traps, noise, and fire. He wasn't stronger than the beast, but he was smarter, confused it, blinded it, and finally scared it away. The forest went silent. Averi stared at him, breathing hard. The human turned to her, looked her over, and said gently, "You okay?" She didn't understand his language fully, but nodded. I think so." His name was Mark Carter, an engineer from Earth. His ship had crashed 2 days ago on Thurl. He was the only survivor. He had no idea where he was or how to get help. Averi led him to a small cave she had seen earlier. It was safe, dry, and hidden. They lit a small fire. Mark gave her water from his bottle. She gave him fruit she picked from strange trees. Neither of them spoke the same language, but they began to understand each other. Averi used her fingers to draw shapes in the dirt, a wing broken, palace, a sad face. Mark looked at her and slowly nodded. "You're a princess." She nodded. He pointed to his chest. "Mark," she repeated, "Mark." Then she touched her chest. Mark smiled. "Nice to meet you, Averi." That night, they shared their stories in broken words and pictures. Averi showed him her wing. She didn't cry or ask for pity. She simply showed him who she was. Mark didn't flinch or look away. He simply said, "You're strong." The next morning, they walked through the forest together. Averi limped, but she didn't ask for help. Still, Mark stayed close, helping without words, moving branches, offering a hand when the ground was rough as the sun rose high. They found a cliff where they could see the land for miles. Averi looked at the palace far in the distance. It shimmered like a memory. Mark followed her gaze. "That's where you live?" She nodded, then paused. Her next words were slow and careful. "Come with me," she said. "To my home." Mark blinked. Your palace? She nodded again. Yes, parents. King. Queen. Mark scratched his head. I'm not sure that's a good idea. Barry touched his hand gently. Her voice was soft, almost afraid. I want you to meet them. There was something in her eyes. Not just hope, but courage. Mark looked at her hand. So small, yet strong. Then he gave a small smile. Okay, Barry. Let's go meet your family. They traveled together for 2 more days. Ray led the way, even through pain. Mark carried their supplies. They became a team. At night they laughed at each other's strange accents and made up signs to speak. Very even fixed Mark's wrist scanner, surprising him with her knowledge. You're not just a princess, he said once. You're an engineer too. She smiled wide. On the 3rd morning, they reached the palace gates. Guards gasped when they saw a very princess. You're alive? They looked at Mark with fear and confusion, but Avery stood tall, her chin lifted. Her voice was firm. This is Mark. He saved me. She didn't stop there. I wish to speak with the king and queen. Now, guards hesitated. Then one of them rushed inside. Mark turned to her. You sure about this? Avery nodded. Her eyes didn't show fear anymore. I want them to know you, and I want. She paused. Then said clearly, I want you to stay. The golden gates of the royal palace slowly opened. Soldiers dressed in silver armor stared at Avery with wide eyes. Whispers ran through the guards like wildfire. The lost princess. She returned. She brought a human. Mark Carter, the stranded engineer from Earth, stood beside Avery as they entered the grand courtyard. The palace was massive. Shining towers floated in the air, connected by glowing walkways. Strange birds flew through the open sky above, their feathers sparkling like stars. Mark tried not to stare. But everything looked like it was from a dream. Avery walked with a limp, but her back was straight. She didn't hide her broken wing or her weak leg. She held her head high as if she were perfectly whole. Mark noticed it. He respected it. 2 tall guards led them through the halls to a wide chamber. Gold pillars stretched to the ceiling. At the far end sat the king and queen of Thyrol. The king had wings of silver and eyes like burning suns. His face was hard, full of pride. The queen was tall and beautiful, her long robes flowing like mist. But her expression was cold. They both stared down at their daughter, the one they had hidden from the world since birth. Avery stepped forward. Mark stayed silent beside her. No one said a word. Finally, the king spoke. So the child returns, Avery's. Her voice was steady. I am no longer a child, father. The queen raised an eyebrow. You disappear for days, go into the cursed forest, and return with this. She looked at Mark like he was some strange animal. Mark crossed his arms but stayed calm. He didn't understand every word, but the tone was clear. Avery took a deep breath. This is Mark. He saved my life. The king narrowed his eyes. A human. He protected me, fed me, helped me walk. He didn't care about my wings or my leg. He didn't treat me like a mistake. The queen's voice turned sharp. You are royal. You are not meant to run around with aliens. Alien stepped closer. He didn't treat me like I was broken. Not once. There was silence. Then she said the words that made the whole hall freeze. I want to marry him. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Guards looked at each other. Nearby advisor dropped his scroll. Mark blinked. Wait, what? Avery turned to him. Her voice softened. Yes, Mark, I want to. You are kind. You listened. You made me feel seen. The king slammed his fist on the armrest. Enough. You are of royal blood. You think I will allow you to marry a wingless outsider? A being not even from this galaxy? The queen added, You shame us. Avery didn't flinch. She stepped in front of Mark. I don't care about your shame. I care about what's real. Mark touched her arm gently. Avery, are you sure? She nodded. Shh. Yes, you treated me like I mattered. What? That's more than my own people did. The king stood, his wings unfolded wide, shining, powerful. If this human wishes to marry my daughter, he must prove his worth. Averi's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? A test. A royal trial, old law. If he passes, then we talk. If he fails, he leaves and never returns. Mark looked up. What kind of trial? The queen smiled. It was not a kind smile. One that proves strength, loyalty, and honor. It will not be easy. Averi's voice shook. That's not fair. He's not trained. He's not a warrior, the king replied. Then he will die and this nonsense will end. Mark stepped forward. His voice was calm. I'll do it. Averi turned to him. Mark, no, you don't have to. He smiled. I want to. You're worth it. The next morning, Mark was taken to the trial grounds. It was a vast arena, part metal, part sand, and full of traps. Floating platforms, swinging blades, fire pits, and robotic beasts. Crowds filled the seats. Thurlians came to watch. Most laughed at the human. Some looked curious. Very few looked hopeful. Avera sat high in the royal box, eyes wide with worry. 3 trials. It's one chance. The announcer shouted in a booming voice. Let the royal suitor trials begin. Trial 1. The maze of judgment. Mark was dropped into a huge metal maze. The walls moved every few minutes. Sharp sounds and smoke filled the air. He had to find the way out while avoiding falling floors and electric traps. Using his engineer skills, he hacked into a control panel, found the maze pattern, and marked safe paths with chalk from his tool pouch. Time ran out just as he leaped. Through the final gate, the crowd was shocked. Some clapped. Others hissed. The king frowned. Trial 2. The Beast of Fire. A massive mechanical beast was released into the arena, a 12-legged robot dragon breathing real flames. Had no weapons. He remembered something Averi once said. Every machine has a weak spot. Even monsters. He ran, dodged, rolled, and climbed. Using spare wires from his suit and an energy cell, he created a quick EMP device. Boom. The robot beast shut down. Sparking, the crowd roared in surprise. The queen's smile was gone. Trial 3. The final choice in the last test. Mark was given a sword. He was told to fight a prisoner, a wounded Thurilian rebel. If he killed the man, he would pass. If he refused, he would fail. Mark looked at the prisoner, then up at the king. Slowly, he dropped the sword. I won't kill for honor. I'll fight to protect. But I won't murder a helpless man. The arena went silent. Then a single clap. From Averi, followed by more, even some nobles began to clap. The king stood, his voice low. You passed. That evening, back in the palace, Mark sat on a balcony with Averi. The stars above twinkled. You didn't have to do all that, she whispered. He looked at her. I'd do it again. For you? She reached out and held his hand. You showed them who I really am, Mark chuckled. No, you showed them. I just reminded them to open their eyes. Below them, the Lilian citizens whispered of the human, who passed the ancient trials. Some even spoke of the disabled princess with new respect, but not all were happy. In the shadows of the palace, angry eyes watched, enemies who believed in blood and power, enemies who would not let change come easily, and they had a plan. The stars over the capital of Thyrol were calm. The wind carried soft music from the royal towers. But inside the palace, peace was breaking apart. In a secret chamber under the west wing, a group of nobles stood around a dark table. They were angry, bitter. Their faces were tight with pride and fear. The human passed the trials. Hey, he is a joke. An outsider. Makes us look weak, said another. Worse, said the oldest among them. Disabled princess. Gains power now. If she marries him, we will lose all influence. They were nobles from ancient families. They believed in purity, strong wings, strong minds, and traditions. To them, Averi was a stain. And Mark, the human, was a threat. One of them placed a hand on a glowing map. We must act now, for the king approves the marriage. before change poisons our world. In the shadows, plans of rebellion began. Meanwhile, in the highest tower of the palace, Mark Carter sat with Avery, the alien princess he had risked his life for. They sat by the window. The night air was cool. Avera leaned her head on Mark's shoulder. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly. Mark smiled. "Regret saving you? Regret passing 3 life-threatening alien death trials?" She laughed, a sound so rare in the palace it made nearby guards glance in surprise. "I'm serious," she said. "You could have walked away. You didn't have to stay." Mark looked at her face, her mismatched eyes, her folded, damaged wing, her brave heart. "I stayed because you treated me like I was more than a crash survivor, more than a human. You saw me." She held his hand. "I did." The next morning, Mark was invited to a private council with the king and queen. The queen looked at him with narrowed eyes, still cold, still unsure. The king was silent for a long time. Then finally he said, "You passed the trials. You've protected our daughter, you have shown courage." Mark stood tall but respectful. The king continued, "We do not trust easily, but we are not blind. You have earned consideration." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Does that mean I have permission?" The queen frowned. "It means the discussion has begun, nothing more." Mark nodded. He knew it wouldn't be easy. That night, while Mark rested in the guest quarters, a quiet hiss echoed through the air. A vent opened. Gas poured in. A soft green mist. Mark awoke, coughing, eyes burning. He stumbled out of bed just before his room. Exploded in fire. Guards rushed in. Panic followed. Flames filled the hall. Avery ran barefoot through the smoke, crying out, "Mark." She found him kneeling outside the ruined room, burned but alive. She threw her arms around him. "Who did this?" Mark's voice was weak. "Someone who doesn't want peace." The next day, the palace tightened security. The king was furious. "Someone inside the court betrayed us," he said to the council. "This was no accident." But many nobles just looked at Mark with silent eyes. They said nothing. But their thoughts were loud. "He should leave," whispered one noble. "He brings danger. He attracts rebellion," said another. "This is our punishment for letting a human in." Avery stood and shouted, "He saved me." "And now you blame him for being attacked?" No one answered. The king raised a hand. "Enough. There will be no more violence. Not while I sit on this throne." But even he could feel the cracks in his rule. Later that day, Avery and Mark sat in the palace garden. The sky was dark, and storm clouds rolled over the mountains. Mark turned to her. "Going to keep pushing." "I know," Avery whispered. "They won't stop unless someone stops them." Avery looked at the plants. Many of them with sharp thorns and soft flowers. "I used to believe I had no power," she said. "That I was just a weak girl with a broken wing." Mark stayed quiet. "But you made me believe again," she continued. "You helped me find my voice." She stood. "It's time I used it." That night, during the royal gathering, Avery entered the great hall alone. All eyes turned to her. Her dress was simple, white, and flowing. Her limp was visible. Her damaged wing dragged slightly behind her. She made no effort to hide anything. She walked to the center. "I have something to say," she said clearly. The music stopped. The nobles turned. She looked at them all, the ones who whispered behind her back, the ones who wanted her hidden, the ones who wanted her gone. "You have always seen me as broken, as a burden, a shame to this royal line." No one spoke. "But I'm not weak. I survived. I endured your silence, your stares, your cruelty, and I am still here." Mark watched from the balcony, his heart pounding. "And now you fear the human. Not because he is dangerous, but because he shows you what kindness looks like, what honor means." A few nobles shifted uncomfortably. "You tried to kill him, but you failed. And you will keep failing because I will not hide anymore." The queen opened her mouth, but Avery raised a hand. "I will choose who I love. I will choose who stands beside me. And if that scares you, good." Thunder rolled in the distance. Avery turned and left the hall. Behind her, silence then. Applause. quiet at first, then louder. From young nobles, from servants. Change was beginning, but deep in the old section of the palace. The rebels gathered for their final strike. They had a plan. They would not wait. "If the king won't stop the human, we will," said the rebel leader. "Tonight we end it." Late that night, a small explosion shook the palace. Lights went out. Alarms blared. A squad of rebels, dressed in stolen armor, stormed the royal tower. Mark, who had been training with palace guards, rushed toward the sound of battle. He saw them armed rebels breaking down the door to Avery's room. Without thinking, Mark charged. He used a stun baton, rolled under a sword swing, tackled one attacker, and threw another into a wall. He fought like a man who had everything to lose. Avery appeared, holding a small energy blade. Together, they fought back to back. "You're really bad at staying safe," she shouted over the noise. Mark laughed. "You're really bad at hiding behind guards." Within minutes, guards arrived and took control. The rebels were captured. But the truth came out. Some nobles had helped them. The king was forced to act. The next morning, in the royal court, the king stood before the crowd. "Some among us have betrayed Tyrell, but some have shown great courage." He turned to Mark and Avery. The human fought with honor. "My daughter showed the strength of a true leader. Today, I give them my blessing." Gasps, then cheers. Real ones. Mark looked at Avery. She smiled. "Guess. You passed your 4th trial," she said. Mark chuckled. "What's the 5th one?" She blushed. "Meeting my grandmother." They both laughed. The sun rose slowly over the capital city of Thurl. Its warm golden light touched the silver rooftops and towers. The storm from the night before had passed. But the palace was still tense. In the main hall, broken pieces of armor shattered. Glass and scorch marks from last night's rebel attack were still being cleaned. Guards stood alert. Nobles whispered in corners. The mood was heavy, but inside the royal healing chamber, Mark Carter was sitting on the edge of a bed, wrapping a bandage around his arm. His face was bruised, his lips slightly cut, but his spirit was calm. Princess Avery stood beside him, holding a small cloth. She gently cleaned a scratch on his cheek. "You never sit still," she said softly. "I was trying to keep you alive," Mark replied with a grin. "You're not easy to protect." She gave a small laugh. "Neither are you," they shared. A look quiet and warm. Later that day, the royal court was gathered again. Everyone was waiting for the king's decision. Would the human be accepted into their world? Would the rebels be punished? Would the princess still marry an outsider? King entered, wearing his full ceremonial robes. His wings were folded behind him, glowing faintly. He stood in front of the nobles and spoke. "Last night, Thurl was attacked, not by outsiders, not by beasts, but by our own people." Whispers filled the room. They wished to stop change. They feared weakness, but they forgot the meaning of strength. He looked toward Mark, and a very strength is not found only in wings or bloodlines. Sometimes it is found in courage, in kindness, in sacrifice. He turned fully to the people. "My daughter has shown us what it means to lead with heart." And the human who stood by her side proved he values life more than power. The queen remained silent beside the throne. Her face was still unreadable. The king raised a hand. "From this moment, Mark Carter of Earth shall be named honorary protector of Tyrell." Gasps echoed across the room. Mark's eyes widened. "That mean?" Avery smiled proudly. "It means you're one of us now." The ceremony took place that afternoon. Thousands gathered in the city square. Lights floated in the air. Music filled the sky. For the first time in centuries, the people saw their Princess Avery standing proudly. At the palace balcony, not hidden, not silent, she wore armor of silver and white. Her damaged wing was not covered. Her limp was not hidden. Beside her stood the human who had changed everything. Mark wore a deep blue suit, designed in Thurlian fashion, but with his earth style mixed in. The sash over his chest carried the symbol of unity. The wing and the earth ring joined together. The king stepped forward, and lifted a ceremonial blade. "Kneel," Mark did. "You have shown great strength, not in war, but in peace. You protected my daughter, and through her, you protected our future." He touched both of Mark's shoulders with the flat side of the blade. "I name you protector." The crowd cheered. Some nobles did not clap. Some turned their heads. But more voices joined in than before. The winds of change were moving faster. Now, over the next few days, Mark was given his own room in the palace, along with new duties. He helped rebuild damaged parts of the city. He trained with the palace guards and taught them basic earth tech and ideas. In return, they taught him how to move in light gravity, how to use energy staffs, and how to read Thitherland symbols. People began to warm up to him. Children pointed and waved. Shopkeepers offered him glowing fruits. Even some guards who once ignored him now asked him for stories of Earth. Still, not everyone was pleased. Deep in a quiet chamber, an exiled noble named Velrin, who had escaped a rest after the failed rebel attack, prepared something dangerous. He spoke to a hidden device. "If we can't stop them with force, then we will tear them apart with fear." One evening, Avery and Mark walked together in the palace gardens. The sky was a canvas of purple and blue. Small moons floated near the horizon. "You're becoming famous," Avery said. "I noticed," Mark replied. "Someone gave me a pie. I'm not even sure if it was food." She smiled, but her face turned serious. "Are you ready for what's next?" Mark stopped walking. "You mean marriage?" She nodded. "I won't lie. Many still don't accept it.
Some think I'm foolish.
That I've let emotion control me. And have you?" Mark asked, only half joking. She shook her head. "Oh, I've never been more sure." She turned to him and took his hands. "You didn't just fight for me. You helped me fight for myself. I want to spend the rest of my life proving they were wrong about us." Mark looked at her for a long time. Then he whispered, "Then let's prove them wrong together." Just before dawn, the warning alarms rang. An explosion rocked the North Tower. Mark jumped out of bed, grabbing his communicator. "What's happening?" A guard's voice replied. "Attack in the archives. Unknown weapon, energy level, not native." Mark ran toward the site. Smoke filled the hallways. He saw strange tech, something not Thyrillian, something old, something alien. He stopped one of the fleeing scientists. "What did you see?" Device, the man said, shaking. "It made shadows come alive. Ancient tech. Forbidden. We think it's before he could finish." Dark energy swirled in the air. Shadow-like creatures formed, twisting, screaming. They looked like beasts made from fear itself. Mark grabbed a nearby energy staff and shouted, "Get everyone out." He began fighting, using the training he had learned. The shadows were fast and hard to hit, but not unbeatable. His tech scanner found their weak spots. Suddenly, one of them leapt toward the queen, who had entered the hall with guards. Mark didn't think. He jumped forward and blocked it with his body, driving the staff through the creature. It vanished in a black mist. The queen stared at him, shocked. "You saved me." Mark breathed hard. "Yeah, that's kind of my thing." She looked at him differently after that. Not as a threat. Not as an outsider, but as something more. Later, the captured rebel tech was studied. It was confirmed. Velrin had found an ancient weapon from a long-lost race. He had hoped to cause fear, panic, and ruin the peace, but instead, it had united. People, even more nobles, began to accept Avery and Mark. The city started changing. Children born with weak wings or slow minds were now celebrated, not hidden. Young warriors trained side by side with those once called unfit. Avery became a symbol of strength, and Mark became a legend. One night, as the stars twinkled above, the king stood with Mark on the palace balcony. "You've done more than I expected," the king said. Mark chuckled. "I get that a lot." The king looked at him seriously. "When I first saw you, I saw weakness. But I was wrong. You brought something we forgot. Hope." He paused. "My daughter wants to marry you. I no longer stand in the way." Mark blinked. "So, this is a yes?" The king gave a small, rare smile. It is. Inside the palace hall, a very waited in a white dress. Simple, beautiful. Glowing under soft lights, Mark entered, wearing royal robes made just for him. They met in the center of the hall. I never thought I'd end up here, Mark said quietly. I always hoped someone would see me, Avery whispered back. And you did, and the priest raised a hand. Let this bond not be of blood or tradition, but of heart and soul. 2 worlds, 1 promise. Mark and Avery held hands, and with the crowd watching aliens, humans, nobles, and children alike, they were joined in the first royal human-alien union in Thurl's long history. The cheers were loud and real. The stars above Thyrol were bright and calm the night after the royal wedding. The sky felt softer. The air was warmer. Something had changed, not just inside the palace, but across the entire world. Inside the Great Hall, laughter echoed as guests from all across the galaxy celebrated the union of Princess Avery and Mark Carter, the first human ever to be accepted into the royal line of Thyrol. Alien nobles in shining robes and Earth diplomats in formal suits sat side by side. Young Thyrolian children played around the fountains. Even the queen, known for her cold nature, shared a drink with the head of Earth's embassy. But Mark didn't care about the attention. He stood by the window of the balcony, holding Avari's hand. They had escaped the crowd for a moment of peace. Mark looked out at the sky and smiled. I still remember the day I crashed on this planet. I thought I'd never get home. Avery leaned against his shoulder. You found a new one? He kissed her forehead. You gave it to me. In the weeks after the wedding, real change began. Across Thyrol, statues were built not of warriors, but of thinkers, protectors, and peacemakers. One sculpture showed Avery with her broken wing extended and a child reaching up to touch it. Schools opened for children with disabilities. Before, they had been hidden or left behind. Now, they were praised for their ideas, talents, and dreams. Mark and Avery worked together in a new office called the Unity Council. Their job was to build peace, not only between Earth and Thyrol, but between all species in nearby systems. They listened to stories from small planets. They helped colonies settle their arguments without war. They created programs to share technology and knowledge. One day, Avery stood before a class of young Thyrilians. Her voice was calm but strong. I once thought I was not enough, she told them, but someone believed in me. He didn't see my wing. He saw my heart. The students clapped. Some had twisted limbs. Some used walking sticks. All of them smiled brightly. Mark watched from the back of the room. This, he whispered to himself, is the real mission. But not all was perfect. Far from Thyrol, in a deep system known as the Black Fold, a powerful empire called the T-Ta. Varn Dominion had started watching. They hated unity. They ruled through fear and control. They believed that weaker species were meant to serve. When they heard that Thurl had accepted a human into its royal bloodline, they saw it as a threat. One of their generals slammed his fist on a table. If these alliances grow stronger, we will lose control of the outer rings. The Varn leader, tall and hidden behind a silver mask, said calmly, then we must make them weak again. A message was sent, a warning. On Thyrol, the warning arrived. As a strange drone, it crashed in the outer gardens of the palace, smoking and sparking. Mark and Avery rushed to the site. Soldiers circled the wreck. Inside the drone, a simple note glowed on a black screen. Unity is a weakness. You will fall. Prepare yourselves. Mark frowned. Who are they? The king, who now fully supported the new age, stepped forward. Old enemies. They fear what you two have built. Avery stood tall. Then we will not let fear win. The Unity Council called an emergency meeting. Leaders from other planets joined in by hologram. Earth's representative, a calm older woman named Director Hale, nodded to Mark and Avery. You've become symbols, she said, and that means you're also targets. Mark agreed, which is why we can't stop now. We need a defense knot. For war, but for protection. Avery added, and we need allies, not just warriors. Thinkers, builders, peacekeepers. The plan was made. A new project began, the Guardian Netta system of satellites, stations, and shared forces designed to protect the allied worlds. Weeks passed, the Guardian Net began to form. Mark visited distant planets, speaking with leaders and engineers. Avery stayed in Thyrol, helping build the command center. Every day brought new challenges, but they worked side by side. Their love was no longer just between them. It was now hope for millions. One evening, as Mark returned from a mission, he walked into their private chamber and found Avery waiting with a soft smile. "You're tired." She sat beside her. "A little." She handed him a data pad. "And this will wake you up." He looked. It was a scan, a heartbeat. Small, but strong. Mark looked up, eyes wide. Avery nodded. "Yes," he laughed, then cried. "We're going to be parents?" She took his hands. "Yes. And this child will be part of both our worlds." News of the pregnancy spread fast. It brought even more attention and more threats. The Varn Dominion sent another message. "We will not allow this child to be born." The threat was clear. But Mark and Avery did not back down. Instead, they made a public broadcast. Avery stood before the camera, her voice clear and calm. "To those who threaten us, understand this. Our child is not weakness. It is the future. And no future built on love and peace will ever be broken by fear." Mark added, "If you come for us, you'll find something stronger than weapons. You'll find unity." The message was shared across galaxies. Many cheered. Some stayed silent. But the Varn prepared for war. Then it happened. A massive Varn fleet appeared near the edge of the Unity Zone. Hundreds of dark ships, armed for destruction, but they did not attack yet. They waited. Watched. The Guardian Net was not ready for a full-scale fight. Tension filled the stars. Mark stood at the center of the command deck. Avery sat beside him, hand on her growing belly. "We can't fight them alone," Mark said. Then a signal came. From Earth, then, from the moon colony of Saren. Then, from a distant world called Yarrow. One by one, ships appeared. Not for war, but to stand. Earth cruisers, Yarrow drones, Saren shield ships. Together, they formed a wall of defense. Avery's eyes filled with tears. They came. Mark smiled. They chose unity. The Varn leader saw the ships and hesitated. For the first time in years, they were outnumbered. In weapons, but in spirit, he turned away. Retreat. And the Varn disappeared into the stars. The battle never happened, but the victory was real. Years passed. The Unity Council became the strongest peace force in the quadrant. Thyrol and Earth grew closer than ever. Mark and Avery raised their child, a little girl with brown eyes and small silver wings. She ran through the gardens with both human and alien friends. She was born into a world her parents helped create, a world where love was stronger than fear, and in the palace. At the end of the day, Mark would often sit beside Avery and tell her, "Back then, I thought I was just a lost human," she would reply, smiling. "Back then, I thought I was just a broken princess." And he'd say, "But we found each other. Together we changed the worlds, and the stars above would shine. Just a little brighter."